Hello, everyone. We are going to talk about the carbon cycle and nitrogen cycles today, or the cycles for life. The agenda is talking about the sun, the carbon cycle, which has photosynthesis and cellular respiration, and the nitrogen cycle, which focuses on soil. The sun. The sun is needed for nearly all life to exist. But why? Well, it's the main power source of the water slash hydrologic cycle and carbon cycle, which creates photosynthesis. It keeps plants alive to help with the nitrogen cycle. The key point with the sun is the ultimate powerhouse for Earth's life. The carbon cycle. Carbon is the building block for the matter that makes up the bodies of all living things. So, what is photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is the food-making process in green plants that uses sunlight. It can also be said that the process of changing light energy into chemical energy. Energy is stored as sugar or glucose. This occurs in plants, algae, some protists, and some bacteria. It takes place in the chloroplasts of cells using chlorophyll, the green pigment in plants. What do plants need for photosynthesis? Well, plants need a few things. First, they need the sun's energy or sunlight coming in. They need carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and they need water. When plants take in carbon dioxide and water, they're able to use the energy from the sun to produce carbohydrates, and they will also release oxygen. Here we're going to look at the actual equation of photosynthesis. So first we have carbon dioxide and the water being taken in by the plant, using the energy of the sun, and they release oxygen, glucose or sugar, and a little bit of water. So why is photosynthesis important to us? Well, plants are producers, the first step in the food chain. We cannot make our own food, so we must get our food from plants. And the way that a lot of these organisms will get their energy is by consuming either a plant, like these primary consumers, or if you're a secondary or tertiary consumer, by eating one of these primary consumers. So we looked at photosynthesis. Now, what is cellular respiration? That is the release of chemical energy for use by cells. Cellular respiration takes place in all organisms, including plants. Respiration is a step-by-step process, just like photosynthesis, where first we take energy from the sunlight, and that is changed into chemical energy, glucose, by photosynthesis, and oxygen is released. Organisms must consume the glucose and oxygen. Organisms then break down that glucose to release energy, water, and carbon dioxide. Here we get to see the cycle from a consumer side. So we have our tree that is releasing oxygen and glucose or sugar. The deer is inhaling, and when it inhales, it's taking in oxygen, and it may be eating this plant, so it's taking in the glucose. When it's during this process, it is going to release carbon dioxide and it will release water. And ATP right there, that's the energy. So the chemical equation for respiration is going to be glucose plus oxygen is going to release carbon dioxide and water. But wait a minute, that looks a little similar, doesn't it? Because it is. When you have photosynthesis, your CO2, carbon dioxide, plus water, plus energy in from the sun is going to release our CO, excuse me, is going to release our glucose and our oxygen, while our cellular respiration is going to release, is going to take in glucose and oxygen and then release carbon dioxide and water, and that's where we have our energy out. What is important to see here is that the products of one process are the reactants of another. So whatever comes in and leaves, whatever leaves can be used in the next process. And this continues to go over and over. So what are some takeaways from the carbon cycle? Well, first, the carbon is the building block of all life. Next, the sun is a direct part of this cycle. Photosynthesis, or producers, and cellular respiration, consumers, need each other for this cycle to work. And finally, all carbon is recycled. And yes, I mean all carbon. So what does that last part mean? Well, carbon in the form of carbon dioxide is also released in the environment when fossil fuels like oil, coal, natural gas are burned. So what problem is associated with the burning of fossil fuels? Carbon dioxide. Well, too much carbon dioxide leads to global warming. Now onto the nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is a building block in the matter that makes up living things. It helps build up proteins, or all amino acids have nitrogen. The air that we breathe is mostly nitrogen, 78%. But most organisms cannot use nitrogen gas in the air. Nitrogen gas is called free nitrogen because it is not combined with other kinds of atoms. It's all on its own. Most organisms can use nitrogen unless it has been fixed. What do we mean by fixed? Well, it has to be combined with other elements to form nitrogen compounds. So looking at the nitrogen cycle, first, we have nitrogen gas in the air moving into the soil. Next, bacteria in the plants and the soil will change nitrogen gas into nitrates, nitrites, and then nitrates. Plants and animals are able to use nitrates to produce those proteins and amino acids. And finally, bacteria again can change these nitrates from the waste and dead plants back into gas. So the whole cycle is able to repeat once again. There's a key moment with the nitrogen cycle, though, and that is called nitrification. First, we have the nitrogen gas coming into the soil and interacting with our first bacteria. That bacteria changes the nitrogen into ammonia. Another bacteria will change that ammonia into a nitrate or a nitrite, and then we have another bacteria that will change that nitrate into a nitrate. And finally, plants are able to use it now. And because plants are able to use it, we can use it because as consumers, need to eat the plants in order to get their proteins and amino acids. Here's another example, and we can see the nitrogen gas starting here, and as it comes into the soil, bacteria that are on roots of some organisms will change that nitrogen into becoming ammonia or ammonium, or if an organism dies, decomposers will change, such as bacteria and fungi, will change that into ammonium. Nitrification, the process we just spoke of, occurs where we have our nitrates, and then another bacteria comes in and creates the nitrates, which then allow our plants and animals to consume it and get it into their bodies. Or we have another bacteria that can change those nitrates back into nitrogen gas and release it back into the atmosphere. So what are some takeaways? Nitrogen is a building block for life. It builds proteins and amino acids. Free nitrogen is not combined with other kinds of atoms. Most plants and animals can only use fixed nitrogen. Bacteria is the most important part of this cycle. And the sun still plays a part. The plants need the sun in order to live. These are our notes on carbon and nitrogen cycle. If you have any questions, please let me know.